Still going on. There we go. There we go. Championship edition of the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. Coming at you, Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, Eric Eager from Super Sports. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB. Much to cover here as your Kansas City Chiefs have now won back-to-back Super Bowl championships. They have won 3 of the last 5, officially now a dynasty by most people's estimation. What is the biggest reason why the Chiefs won the Super Bowl? What changed in the second half of their offense? How many Super Bowls is Patrick Mahomes going to win? 3 and counting right now. Does Steve Spagnuolo deserve to be recognized as one of the best defensive minds in the history of the Super Bowl? What did this win do for Andy Reid's legacy? Does this team stay together for a run at a three-peat? How likely is that three-peat? Do they win it all next year? We talk about it right now here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.
You're listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric Eager is the vice president of research and development for Sumer Sports. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the best Chiefs podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro.
Thank you, Curtis. Super Bowl edition. Never doubted it for a second. I don't know about anybody else, but boy, felt like it was in the bag the whole way. In the end, whether you doubted it or not, the Chiefs are Super Bowl champions. And Jeff, let's start with it. In your mind, as you look at it now, looking back, what was the biggest reason why the Kansas City Chiefs won the Super Bowl?
They redefined themselves on the fly. That's what I took away from this season. You know, I'm sure there are people out there who are going to claim, as you said, they never had a doubt. But I spent a lot of time this postseason talking to people after games, especially Buffalo and Baltimore. They were like, I can't believe they're still playing. And it really came down to just they redefined themselves after that Raiders game on Christmas Day when they lost. They recognized that they couldn't continue with the idea that they had a number of players who could contribute to this team on offense, and they recognized that the defense was championship caliber, and they had to ride that as far as they could take them. And so that changed in the last few games when they were playing against backup quarterbacks. It became more apparent throughout the postseason, and it was a big factor in what we saw on Sunday. You know, if they redefined themselves again in the second half of that game, some plays we hadn't seen in a while, and Patrick Mahomes running the football. So hats off to them for being self-aware and realizing that there was still time to make a lot of the season by redefining themselves.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Jeff. Eric, listen, the game was kind of a microcosm of their season. All defense early, not much offense. Then the offense gets going, some sloppy football, some snaps, some turnovers. Yet in the end, the offense locks in at the end and you know gets it done when they need to. Great special teams, or great kicking at least from Harrison Butker and Townsend. I don't know what's the biggest reason in your mind. Eric, what's the biggest reason in your mind?
I things have been kind of clicking in and out. By the way, Petro, there's been so much Eric Eager love in the comments, which is why I know that you haven't been looking at them and haven't been posting them up on the web.
I have other things I'm trying to do. One, get you.
It's fine. No, I'm just kidding. Look, everybody wants to give me. I am the positive one on the show, and everybody calls me a homer. I'll just say this: they're the best team in the league, and they have been for the last 5 years. So it's not that hard to pick them to win the Super Bowl. the thing is, Jeff, I think nailed it though. They were a team that was in constant refinement. They were a team that all year. Now, this was the one thing, and I will say during the game on Sunday, I at multiple occasions thought that they were finished. The interception that Pat threw, the subsequent like losing a timeout, not challenging Kelsey being first down, running on 3rd and 1, which is still the moon to them 2 years in, not getting it, punting it away. But the one thing that stayed constant for the Chiefs, like kind of all season, was Steve Spagnuolo second half adjustments have been at Hall of Fame caliber all year. Sunday was the first time that they gave up more than a touchdown in the second half of a game since December 3rd against Green Bay. The fact that the San Francisco 49ers didn't get to them in the first half to the tune of more than 10 points is the reason. Like the night, and I'm gonna pull a Jeff here. The Niners lost this game more than the Chiefs won it in a lot of ways, and I think that and the Chiefs were there to take advantage of it, and that's the story of the whole Chiefs season. The Ravens lost the AFC Championship game more than the Chiefs won it. The Bills stepped on their junk all season, and the Chiefs were there to take advantage of it. The Dolphins couldn't stay healthy and couldn't support their quarterback the way that they were supposed to, and the Chiefs took advantage of it. And that is exactly the thesis that I had about this team, which was just the marginal benefit of being the best, the absolute best team in the AFC is simply not there anymore, the way it was in 19 and 20 and 21 and whatever. And the Chiefs just hang around like Mike McDermott in Rounders, and they just outlasted all the teams in the NFL, and now they're Super Bowl champions again. And despite my daughter rooting for the Niners, my bad daughter, my good daughter rooted for the Chiefs with me. And it was really fun to see because they had no business winning that game for multiple times in that game. So it was fun to see. It was fun to see Marquez Valdes-Scantling score a touchdown after an awful season. It was fun to see McCole Hardman score a touchdown after my guy could not locate a ball for the first 2 playoff games. It was truly a storybook season for a team that did not deserve to win a Super Bowl, and they did it. And it was fun to watch. I think this one's a special one. I think they all are, of course, but they were very. I thought this was an incredible run, and I think when we look back at all their Super Bowls, by the time it's all said and done, this one's going to be the most unique one.
Jeff, I mean, you didn't say the defense, right?
Yeah, I did. I said they had a great defense, and they realized they had to play to the defense.
But it was. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, but what about just the level of defense? What about? I mean, is this? Somebody said, is this one of the top 8 defenses of all time?
I wouldn't go that far. I mean, you're talking about Steel Curtain and 85 Bears. The Ravens, the Bucks. I mean, it was a great defense, but obviously. But you start talking about those level of defenses. You're talking about multiple Hall of Famers on it. But I do agree, like someone wrote in there, that Steve Spagnuolo deserves to be mentioned in that category of what Bill Belichick was to Bill Parcells, what Buddy Ryan was to Mike Ditka, what Tony Dungy was doing back in the day, what Jim Johnson did for any, what he's done. And you go back to 2007 Patriots, Giants, stopping that offense, which was one of the greatest offense going, winning 3 championships here. The run they had this year, yeah, I mean he was masterful, and some of the calls he made, some of the choices he made, I kept thinking, man, where's George Kittle in this offense? But he had a plan for George Kittle. They played a lot of man coverage, a lot of cover zero. There are a lot of things that people did not do to the 49ers, and they got away with it. When they announced Leo Chenal was starting in this game, I was like, oh my God, this is not going to work out well. And he was the player of the game. I thought there's no way he could be on the field dealing with some of the weapons they have within the 49ers and have it work out well. And he had the biggest play of the first half for him, creating that Christian McCaffrey fumble. So, yeah, I think this, again, they've won 3 championships in 3 different ways. But I said it way back when this whole thing got started with Mahomes that I think they underestimated the power of defense. I love watching defenses win championships because it's as much as we talk about offense, I know you guys are offensive guys. Being able to play as one and make stops and keep your offense alive and to deliver big plays time and again, that's a thing of legends.
Yeah, no, I agree.
You think in some.
Go ahead, Eric.
Well, somebody wrote in the comments about Dave Tobe, like Harrison Butker had one of the best kicking seasons of all time this year too. Like to Jeff's point, they've won. Like Harrison Butker was terrible last year, and then he was amazing this year. It's a hallmark of a great team, as Jeff just said, to win multiple different ways. And I think it's a hallmark of a great quarterback to be able to win multiple different ways. Again, like it's truly an impressive. I mean, I don't think there's enough superlatives to discuss this team, frankly.
No, I agree because it wasn't like it was, they got every break, right? They got a big one. Let's not discount the muffed punt, which was a big. Probably the biggest play of the game. Let's be clear. But the one thing I say about that when people are like, "Oh, well, the Niners just got unlucky," it's like, well, you got to be down covering the kick to get on the ball, right? The ball didn't just, fling 40 yards across the field into the arm of a Chiefs player who was walking off playing grab ass.
Well, you got to jump on it too, right?
Yeah,
Ray McCloud, you can't try to pick up and run with it.
I mean,
you got to jump on it.
Yeah, to me, they were, and listen, they knew the overtime rules. There was, a lot of things that were going on that said that the Chiefs were the more prepared team, not that the 49ers were unprepared, just that the Chiefs were more prepared in some ways. But I think, they were the more injured team, right? Each of them lost a safety. The 49ers were without a safety. The Chiefs were without Cook. Amenahu was down, right? As I was looking through, unless you're going to try to tell me Cleveland Farrell mattered as much as Amenahu, I don't buy it. I think the Chiefs' Derek Nottie was out. They were thin across the defensive line.
Joe Thuney is a $16 million guard.
Yeah. I think this team, like anything that was like, well, one play could have taken it here or there. Sure. I'll buy that. Except for I almost feel like whatever play needed to be made, Patrick Mahomes is going to make it. Let me introduce Patrick Mahomes to the discussion. Why did the Chiefs win? Patrick Mahomes, right? Like the defense is fantastic because, we'll talk about Brock Purdy more later tonight, but, Brock Purdy didn't suck. Like, let's be clear. Patrick Mahomes stared down a top 5 defense again and, went up and down the field at the end of the game. Now, granted, partially because they were worn down, but he was part of what wore him down. I think the Brett Veach element of the depth of this roster is big. I think it came through with all those injuries that they had. I think Steve Spagnuolo is big. I think this is amazing because Patrick Mahomes won his 3rd MVP, and he played great. And he's worthy of it. Trust me, I was flying in late bets on Harrison Butker at like 100-1 for MVP. And I thought after, I got it in right as he knocked the 57-yarder through. And I'm like, okay, I'm great. All I need him to do is win the game. I have a game-winning field goal and I'll get there. And as I looked at it, no one's stats were really that big at that time. And coming down the stretch, Mahomes did all his work. But still, even with that, you look around, you're like, God, Spags was great. Wow, Brett Veach had a run. Look at the depth on this roster. You mentioned guys like Leo Chenal coming out. Harrison Butker. It was a great save by Tommy Townsend, who a year ago they were trying to have Dustin Colquitt hold snaps for him hold placements for him because he was doing so bad. And he gets a high one down, and Butker just line drives the longest field goal in Super Bowl history. All over the place. This was a very good team win. Yeah. Even though Mahomes is the single biggest factor on this team.
Yeah, I'll push back on that. He won the game in the end, but the defense set him up. The defense kept him alive. When he threw that interception, I think Eric referenced it, I thought this could be the end of them. And to get a stop there, Chris Jones, a big pressure when Deebo Samuel's running down the field wide open. Chris Jones, a big pressure when Juwan Jennings is breaking open in the end zone.
The blitz by McDuffie when they're in field goal range. Yeah. All the Niners need to do is take one.
Yeah, they get one first down there and they burn the Chiefs timeouts. Game's over. So I hear you, Soren, but I'm not going to diminish what the defense did in that game. They created the opportunity for him to come out and make that play, make those plays at the end, because there were so many times where I thought, man, this is it.
Well, I agree, but I definitely agree this defense is better, but didn't they face the same thing in 2019? He was throwing picks in the 4th quarter of that game and still ultimately drove him down 3 times for touchdowns in the last 7 minutes. I mean, I would get that if it's like, well, you know how it is. We've seen Mahomes. He can't really get over the hump. No, he always gets over the hump.
Yeah, but the point I'm making is that he didn't really take over until the fourth quarter of that game. They got it. Look, the fumble punt at the 16-yard line set him up, right? They're 10-6 at that point. The offense was doing nothing in the first half. That's why I'm saying you're right, he won the game, but I feel like when the Niners went down the field in that first possession, I was like, okay, they're coming to play. And then all of a sudden the ball's on the ground and they got it. And I'm just like, damn, that's amazing. And then I'm thinking the best stat of the game was the ball was on the ground 7 times between both teams, and the Chiefs got 6 of them.
I will buy. I will buy. Well, but some of those fumbles are the bowling ball snaps of Creed Humphrey, which count. They're fumbles. It's why Patrick Mahomes now holds the Super Bowl career record for recovered fumbles, because half the snaps are fumbles when they get to him. So that's a little bit, disingenuous, that number just by itself without the explanation of what it is. But to your point about the defense, I will buy into what you're saying, but it's the defense's play in the first half, right? When the Chiefs offense is doing nothing, they kept holding him. I know they eventually the trick play with a illegal lineman downfield made it 10-0, but they kept holding him because late in the game, Jeff, I mean, the 49ers scored twice in the fourth quarter and once in overtime. But it wasn't a shutout coming down the stretch. Mahomes would score and the defense would give up a score. Brock Purdy took the lead the last 3 times he was on the field.
Well, Shanahan outcoached himself normally, right? Like Shanahan doesn't go for that 4th and 3 normally. He did, which was great. By the way, no one gave him any shit for going for 4th and 3 when a field goal would have tied the game, boys. Like, let's be even-handed about this, because he made it, of course.
That's right. You're in the get it right business.
You're in the get, yeah. So he went for it. They converted. But then also, they got a stop in the first drive of overtime. But Trent McDuffie was an MVP candidate. If he hangs on to 1 interception in that game, he's the MVP of the game. He gets called for holding on Juwan Jennings, who probably would have been the MVP had the Niners won. And again, like, they go down and score a field goal. To your point, Soren, the Niners punched above their weight class in the second half, which is why Mahomes had to overcome it. If a couple more things go the Chiefs' way in the second half, the Chiefs win in regulation, and Mahomes doesn't even have to be Superman. He has the 1 touchdown to MVS, and it's over. So I do agree
are we really going to call this like bad luck away from a blowout when they got a muffed punt? Like, I'm trying not to be the guy that keeps bringing that up.
But I'm agreeing with you.
I listen, the 49ers, they play this game. Chiefs aren't blowing the 49ers out. They play it again and again.
I don't think anybody's saying that.
Well, I'm just saying
Eric just did. He just said there were a couple of plays away from the Chiefs blowing out.
I'm saying they win in regulation if the Niners either kick a field goal to tie or don't get, like, I think that this game is less on the shoulders of Mahomes if a few things go their way that the Niners don't act. And so Mahomes is the MVP in large part because Shanahan went for a 4th down. He never goes for it. So then Pat has to come down and drive down the length of the field to get a game-time field goal to end regulation. And there was the Trent McDuffie hold, which almost never happens because he's a great player. And so then he had to go length of the field for the game-winning touchdown. If neither of those happen, Pat might just have a garden variety game-winning field goal drive, which you're getting your 100-1 on Butker cashed in on FanDuel.com/Petro. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm saying. And I'm backing you up that Mahomes had to overcome things, and he does because he's great. Most of these times, like if this was Kirk Cousins or this was Derek Carr or Brock Purdy, we're saying, well, could have won a Super Bowl, but a few things went wrong. And the reason the Chiefs win 3 Super Bowls in 5 years is because we don't have to say that. We say a few things went wrong, and because he's the best guy in the league, he overcomes that. The left guard, the second left guard tears his elbow, needs Tommy John surgery. Doesn't matter because it's Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
He has all this stuff.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is if that game's 17-3 at halftime or after the interception, it's a different conversation about this. Then he really has to win the game. I think that he was in position to win because the defense never let it get to a point where it had to be out of control.
Yeah, and I agree. Listen, I think the defense was spectacular. And I think they had to have the defense this year. I think if you ran out the same old defense, they're clearly not here. I mean, I think it goes without saying they were not
even making the playoffs.
That's true. Patrick Mahomes was still great. The numbers don't reflect it as much because he didn't have the guys who could catch the balls he was throwing to him.
Well, Mahomes this year, statistically, Mahomes had the highest time to throw, 3.00 of his career, scrambled the most of his career, 64 times, had the lowest average depth of target of his career, 6.9 yards. All those three things happened this year. And 35.8% was his pressure rate, which is the highest of his career. He literally dealt with the most shit he's ever dealt with in his career at quarterback. And that's why we saw the numbers go down. But again, this was a Brett Veach Super Bowl. We have this quarterback who is amazing. He's the first quarterback in NFL history to win a Super Bowl and to even play in a Super Bowl with the biggest cap hit on his own team. We're going to stretch him out and push him to the absolute limit because we have this amazing defense and great special teams. And we're going to see if we can win that way. And it was by the hair of their chinny chin, but they did it. And again, because they put Pat through the ringer. Hopefully they don't have to do this anymore, but they put Pat through absolute hell this year, and they were able to win because the rest of the roster is good because Patrick can carry an offense on his literal back.
I think comments like this, the Chiefs were the smarter team. They utilized their tight end, and the 49ers Kittle had 4 receiving yards. I mean, that's
they were bracketing him. They were doing like taking him out of the game.
I know that was the game plan, and it was the Chiefs acting like the 49ers were just dunces out there, and the Chiefs needed overtime to beat them. Does not make your team look better.
Yeah, I think Dre Greenlaw getting hurt had something to do with those numbers.
I think absolutely. That's right. That's a very important injury I didn't mention when I was going through the injuries the Chiefs had. That the 49ers, that was a very big injury for the 49ers there. Listen, I listened to a bunch of guys in Boston talk about this, and I listened to a guy say, he called it Patrick Mahomes' weird voodoo crap, right? And he said he's just great, and it gets in the head, and other things happen. And he pointed to like Shanahan's mistakes, and he pointed to the muff punt, and he said, it's just like the way it used to work for Tom Brady. And I've said this a million times. It feels like that because it's always Tom Brady winning and it's always Patrick Mahomes winning. And so you go back and you look at the spots where the other team could have made a play and they didn't do it. And you forget that the Chiefs missed plays, right? You forget that Patrick Mahomes threw a pick, as you're saying, could have been a backbreaker right there to start, the game. You're forgetting that Isaiah
picked 6 to 1 Jennings on the 1 touchdown.
Isaiah fumbled the ball as they're seemingly going in, right? You don't remember that because the Chiefs went on to win. They're there for both teams, and it's the losers lament. The losers in any close game lament and remember and talk forever about all the 1 or 2 plays, the little things that could have gone the other way and would have made them win. The reason you don't with Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes is they do whatever it takes to win. Right? I'm with you, Jeff. The defense was phenomenal. I don't in any way want to slide it. And by the way, Jeff picked the Chiefs in this game and is celebrating their defense as being fantastic. I don't get when it's like Jeff's not giving the Chiefs any credit.
They don't hear that, Soren.
I know. It's mesmerizing to me. But anyway.
Jeff was the most rational person about this team. This team's like, newsflash, everybody in the crowd. This is the worst team that is this team wins 5 rings, 6 rings, 7 rings, whatever. This is going to be the one we look back on, and this is the bad Chiefs team that won a Super Bowl. Jeff is the cat of the group. I'm the dog. Jeff is making the Chiefs earn his affection. And he's a much more discerning person here. I'm the homer. He's the one. This is the bad Chiefs team that won a Super Bowl. And I'm glad it's special this way. It's fun. But to act like this team after losing to Oakland on Christmas was going to win the Super Bowl. Come on. Even I had doubts.
Oh, and they evolved, they changed, and look. If you want someone to blow smoke up your ass all year, then you're gonna have to go someplace else. But that's not that doesn't tell the story of this Chiefs team.
Yeah.
And why this, and to Eric's point about why it was so much fun and why it's so great, is because they were not a championship team when they lost to the Raiders. They had the pedigree, they had the ingredients, but if they had to go play the Dolphins an hour after the Raiders, and I don't mean because they were beat up, I mean just where they were as a team, they probably would have lost. I mean, it's like they had to change a lot of things. They absolutely were not a championship team. By the way, no one's quoted me on this. I was the guy that said going into the playoffs, no, they won't win the Super Bowl. They're good enough to beat every team in this playoffs, but they're not good enough to beat 4 playoff teams in a row. And if you had told me they'd have to go through 2 number 1s and 2 number 2s, I'd have told you you're effed in your head if you think that they're going to put those 4 games together. Stop. This was not a gimme, a layup. And by the way, how is it a layup when the 49ers dumbed their way into giving the victory to the Chiefs? I can't believe
this is what makes
crossfire of hypocrisy.
But this is what makes sports.
Yeah.
Put one of the comments. I did say they could. This is why probabilities matter. This is why of course they could have won the Super Bowl. But look, MVS made an absolute 7-course meal out of the wide open touchdown he did catch. This team was hanging on the edge of every single thing. MVS went down on the game-winning catch against the Ravens. My guy fell on his butt and let the thing land in his arms. This thing was always going to be a grind. That snap, Bucker, that ball, that 57-yard kick out, it would have hit me in the face. That thing got 6.5 feet up the ground. This team was always hanging on the edge. To act like this was inevitable, that's what makes this special, folks. That's what makes sports great, is that this team sucked for most of the year. Let's be honest.
But don't you think?
Not only their first 2 Super Bowls, guys, they beat the Jags, the Titans, the freaking Texans, all these terrible, and they were better teams.
Yeah.
And this team went through the Dolphins with 2 leading the league in passing. Josh Allen, who should have been MVP, Lamar, who was MVP, and the Niners team, which was awesome. This is what makes sports phenomenal. That's what's great.
Don't you think, though, that the greatness of this team, of this run, was that not just knowing how to win, but understanding the moments that lead to wins? Like the Chiefs really, and it's kind of throughout their entire run, but especially in this postseason, they were able to not just execute in those moments, like when Chris Jones gets the key pressure, when Trent McDuffie comes on the blitz and tips the ball when he doesn't get to Brock Purdy, or the recoveries, the Leo Chenal play, but it's also the recognition of them. That's where they separate themselves from everybody else. Because really, as you mentioned, these other teams had opportunities to win the game. And because they didn't do it because they didn't understand how important those moments were. When Ray McCloud's trying to pick that fumble up, following the ball. Like, you're in a situation here where if you lose that fumble, Chiefs are in the red zone, next play's a touchdown. That's what happened. You talk about McCaffrey, fumbling that ball. It's like, has he fumbled more than twice this year? He's a reliable ball carrier. But that stuff, even going back to the start of the year, the Chiefs always talk about winning games in September because it matters to seeding in January. And some of these teams haven't figured that out yet. They don't understand that and maybe the Chiefs figured it out when Dee Ford went offside in that AFC Championship game 6 years ago. And that was the one thing that kept them from having a 4th Super Bowl here. Maybe they recognize that those little things become huge things.
But that game is a microcosm of exactly, right? Like, that Patriots team is this Chiefs team. That team messed around all year. They were terrible. They remember when they lost on that lateral play to Kenyon Drake, and Gronk's back there lumbering, trying to tackle Kenyon Drake. They lost to Detroit. They lost to Jacksonville. They got beat up. They got killed by Detroit on Sunday Night Football. And they messed around. But you know what? When the Chiefs needed a stop against Tom Brady in the AFC Championship game at home, Tom Brady showed everybody who the GOAT was in that game, went to Gronk, and then the Chiefs made one mistake. When Tom Brady slipped up once, Dee Ford was offsides. And the Chiefs are the same way. They messed around all year. But when the Niners needed to get one stop, actually it was the same thing. The Chiefs could have gotten 2 or 3 stops in that title game, and they didn't get any of them. And the Chiefs drove the length of the field with a chance
that's
with
what
a field goal.
Do. Yeah. I mean, like,
and that's what great players do.
Yeah, that's like whether it's
Yeah, that's
baseball
what
and
great
you
players
give a
do.
guy a second fat pitch. He missed it once. Don't give him another one. You got away with it. He's going to crush it. And I think it's the same thing. That's why it always feels like something screwy happens. Oh, Tom Brady, here he is in the Super Bowl game because D Ford lined up offsides. No, like he makes you pay when you do that.
No.
Right? Like then on the next drive, he just nickel and dimes you to death with Gronk on Eric Berry, and it's game over. And Patrick Mahomes is doing the exact same thing, right? The Niners can piss and moan about the muff punt all they want, but it takes someone to capitalize on it, right? Early on, the Chiefs didn't capitalize on it. They got the turnover on the first drive and did nothing with it. Punted them right back. That was the first feeling of doom and gloom that Chiefs fans had. Oh my God, we didn't capitalize on that one. You know, and that is not giving credit to the defense of the Niners, who went out there and stopped them and did a great job all first half of stopping the Chiefs. And likewise, you know, the Kansas City Chiefs defense did the same thing to the Niners. When they turned it over, they got to stop. I mean, you know, this was a heavyweight fight.
Yeah.
There's two champions.
But people thought it wasn't going to be that way, though, right? People thought it was going to be a rollover because the Ravens were the big obstacle, right?
I think for some, and I think that I don't think that was an unfair expectation to have for the game, right? I think the Ravens did beat the holy living crap out of the 49ers a few weeks before. I mean, I don't think you're a fool if you're like, hey, we already played our Super Bowl. You know, I think you haven't seen a lot. You know, maybe you need to watch more games. That one game isn't indicative of how a team plays all the time, but. Yeah, listen, what changed in the second half offensively? Did they just wear down the 49ers defense and they got tired, Jeff, or was there something schematically that was different?
Well, they got tired. Dre Greenlaw wasn't there. They were able to take advantage of Oren Burks, his backup. I think I saw the stats that he was targeted 9 times and passes were completed against him 9 times, and that was a big factor in this. But they started to go back to some stuff that worked, you know, a lot more mesh stuff, a lot more crossing routes. They didn't press it, though. That's what impressed me about how they played in the second half, that they really didn't try to force things when they could have, which could have made things worse. I know Rashee Rice got upset on that play down near the end zone where, you know, towards the end of the game of the regulation when he went to Kelsey instead of Rice. But for the most part, I thought that they were very much within themselves. And I also thought that what they went through this year, all that frustration, like all that ineptitude, inconsistency, prepared them to deal with this. I think in these kind of games, if you've been humming pretty well and you have that kind of first half, I think most teams melt down. Most teams can't handle it. They start getting tight. They start looking for ways to make plays. And because they'd had so many bizarre, confounding moments that, you know, guys throwing their helmets on the sideline and getting each other's faces, that it really – they've been there before in some kind of weird way. So I think they were able to recognize, let's find something that works. You know, the run game is not going to be it today. We can get Kelsey loose because a backup linebacker is out there. And let's just kick field goals and wait for our chances and make it work. I think that they were really smart about how they played through that adversity of the first half.
What'd you see changing, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, Jeff talked about, I mean, I think back to the Tampa Bay Super Bowl and the fact that team was 14-1 in the regular season. You know, the only real adversity they had in the playoffs was Patrick getting hurt. And, you know, when things went poorly in the Super Bowl, they didn't know how to deal with it, right? And I think that being able to do that was big. Oren Burks is obviously a key. They protected Patrick better in the second half. They also ran Patrick. It was Patrick Mahomes' first designed run since, I believe, week 15 of 2022. So, again, I don't think Andy called and look, I'm a big Andy Reid fan. I don't think Andy Reid called a good game until the second half. I thought that the early down runs were, and we always say this when they're not successful and everything, I just don't know if I think it was pretty apparent early that at the line of scrimmage, they were going to struggle. And I don't know if Andy got away from that as quickly as they could have. The sideline to sideline stuff, Fred Warner was terrific all game, so that stuff didn't work. And so they kind of went to their bread and butter in the second half, which was Kelsey on crossers, against Burks, as Jeff said. The wide receivers really weren't a factor outside, and Watson made some plays, but other than that, it was really Patrick's legs. First half, he really didn't run it much. All the people who had props on Mahomes over 27.5 yards were sweating that thing out, and then he got about 60-something in the second half. It was really trusting Mahomes, trusting the bread and butter, which was Kelsey on all kinds of stuff. And there was running backs in the passing game too with Pacheco and McKinnon to a lesser extent. So it was Andy kind of finally facing facts about the line of scrimmage and how much they were going to struggle there if they kept trying to play the Niners straight up.
I heard we have had a couple of comments about Steve Spagnuolo and where he ranks. Is he a Hall of Famer there? And I heard somebody talking, and they're like, well, with all the talent he has, I think it's a very talented defense, but there are 2 starters that are first-round picks, and the highest drafted one is number 21, right? That's where Trent McDuffie went. So they're talented, and this is a tribute and a credit to Brett Veach. But a lot of times you hear that, and it's like, well, Bosa won 3 or 2, and this other guy, some team that sucked for 4 years and piled up top 5 picks all over the place, or had a number 6 and a number 18, and then they signed a big free agent that was also a top 5 pick. That's not what this defense was. I mean, how much credit do we give Steve Spagnuolo? I think there are very good players on this defense, and that have far exceeded their draft position. L'Jarius Sneed, on and on and on. But this is now 4 Super Bowls for him. He's done it with 2 different franchises, right? He's done it over a wide period of time where the game has changed and evolved, and officiating's changed and evolved. Will he get credit as one of the great defensive coordinators? I mean, he should have at least surpassed Jim Johnson. The Monty Kiffins. Yeah. Isn't he now? It's what? Bill Belichick, the DC, and him that are the.
Yeah, but he won't get that kind of credit because the quarterback and the coach overshadow everybody here. And that's the downside of being on a team with that, that level of talent on the offense. People think it's always, you just said it, 20 minutes ago, like they won because of Mahomes. I think most people are going to go to that idea. But yeah, I definitely believe that he's definitely in that elite class of defensive coordinators. And what his greatest gift with this defense was getting them to play together. And I go back to that first game without Chris Jones there. And I remember the press conference. You might have been there, Soren, when he talked about, somebody asked him a question about how you're going to play this game against the Lions without Chris Jones there. And he talked about guys playing together, being unified, believing in each other. And it was like, maybe that was pablum for the writers at that time, the media who was in there. But I heard him talking. That was the kind of stuff that if you really know football, understand football, like he was talking about like the kind of defense that people really should be playing, which is a team game. Like every man here can contribute. Every man here can make a play. And that's what made this defense so good, was that he was able to get those guys to believe that. If you would have asked me a year ago, I would have said, you take Chris Jones away from this defense and it's going to be a long day. But somehow L'Jarius Sneed went from being a good player to being an all-pro caliber corner. Trent McDuffie, turned into an all-pro corner. Willie Gay, who I thought used to run around his head cut off, became a really dependable player. Drew Tranquil came in here out of nowhere and became Nick Bolt, all these guys who you go up and down. And so all these guys who, if you separate them, may not be that impressive, but as a unit, they really believed in what he was selling and believed that they were the strength of this team. And I think that's hard to do when you've got that quarterback and that coach on the other side.
Eric, and this is just a little bit of what we had Mitchell Schwartz come in here and tell us, that this coaching staff loves their players, believes in their players, keeps working with their players more than anybody else. I mean, I think that obviously on the defensive side, it obviously starts with Andy Reid, the head coach, but certainly Steve Spagnuolo is an Andy Reid guy from back in the day. I mean, he preaches that as well. That's part of coaching as well, is getting the best out of the players.
Well, it was funny because I didn't internalize this, but you guys remember our first year doing the show. What was our main? Their defense was horrendous, and our main consternation was like, Spags only wants to play veterans. He didn't even want to play a third-year safety, Juan Thornhill, over Daniel Sorensen because Sorensen knew where to line up. He wanted to play Anthony Hitchens over Nick Bolton, right? And we had all these examples. And I remember messaging somebody, it was on the coaching staff last year, and I was like, wow, you guys really drafted the heck out of this defense. And he said that he was like, well, no, I mean, Andy sticks with these play. And he told me about the Buffalo game. Remember when Joshua Williams got absolutely torched in the Buffalo game and of last year, 22. And, they benched him for Jalen Watson, but then they kept kind of mixing him in, even though he clearly wasn't ready to play. And they kept mixing him in. And I think Spagnuolo's biggest feat has been he transitioned from a guy, they weren't young defenses in New York. It was Tuck, Umanura, Aaron Ross. It was guys who had played in the league and proven themselves. Antonio Pierce. And then he goes to the defense in 2019 was Mike Pennell, who has played here before, Terrell Suggs, who has played, Frank Clark's a veteran, Anthony Hitchens, Damian Wilson, all had played in the NFL for other teams before. Tyrann Mathieu was the MVP of the team. Rashad Breeland had played in the league before for another team, right? So it was a veteran-laden team. To the part of the Tyreek Hill trade that we don't really acknowledge was it required a ballsy move from the front office, but it also required a leap of faith from a coaching staff defensively that has historically been very allergic to growing players while on the field. They've been very good at developing players on the bench, but developing players on the field with the growing pains was a step that they took in 22 that was incredibly brave by them, by their standards, and it pays off, right? 3 rookie corners had to play the whole AFC Championship game last year against Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and then this entire year, they basically, 8 starters in the last 3 drafts were drafted in 21 through 23, 6 of them in 22. So that's Spagnuolo's biggest feat to me is he transitioned from a guy who was very rigid about its veterans to now being able to take a defense that's now one of the youngest in football and turn them into one of the best in football. To me, that's when you write the Hall of Fame case for him. He deserves that credit as evolving into somebody who's able to adopt Andy Reid's ability to teach while also playing those players. And it also applies to the rest. I can tell you, people wanted MVS gone, right? And they stuck with him. They stuck with Hardman. And those are players that made big plays for them down the stretch as well. And I think that it's a total team thing, but Spag specifically was able to develop players when it wasn't all that easy.
And let's be clear, they did not stick with Kadarius Toney. He was inactive for the game. So it's not just like it's a free pass for everybody. They're selective in how they do it. The Red Gold and
Sky Moore didn't play on Sunday either. And Sky Moore didn't play on Sunday either. So they're selective. Yeah, for sure.
The Red Gold and Bold podcast proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete with free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Of course, every project comes with a written warranty. Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer, helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. If you own a business, if you manage a business, let Gann Asphalt and Concrete let you get back to business. Find them online right now at GannAsphalt.com. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. What does it do for the legacy, Jeff, of Patrick Mahomes? Where are we now? Now it's done. It's official. We know through his age 28 season, he's a 3-time Super Bowl champ. Where does he sit in the pantheon of great quarterbacks now for you?
I'd say he's third. He's behind Joe Montana and Tom Brady.
Okay.
Just because Montana's got 4 championships, right? But yeah, Tom Brady obviously is who he is. But you look at where he is now with the trophy case he's assembled, the way that this year went for him, as Eric said, playing in having his worst career year, and then winding up with a second straight championship. Going back to back, I think, is a huge thing for him because it puts him into a very select company. Of all the great quarterbacks who've won championships, only 2, right? Have gone back to back? 3. Montana, Brady, and Bradshaw, right? That's it.
That's first.
And Aikman had back to back. And
Bob Greasy, all the back to backs.
All the great ones.
Happened 8 times. It's 7 teams 8 times.
Okay. So, but that's very elite company. He'll obviously, I'm projecting here, but he'll have opportunities to do more in the MVP category, play in more Super Bowls. So to do it at the rate he's done it, the pace he's done it, 3 and 5 years, I don't think that there's. You can put him higher if you want, but I definitely would not put him lower than 3.
Okay, Eric.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard for me to like. He did pass Peyton Manning in my mind, even though Peyton Manning is amazing and one of the best. I mean, this is how high of a regard I have for Mahomes.
Yeah.
Montana's interesting for sure. I think Montana won with 2 different head coaches, which is a feather in his cap. There's always the question about Reid and what Mahomes would do without Reid. I don't mind Jeff's ranking at all. I put him maybe tied with Montana, just because the Joe Montana's defenses were quite good too, and so I think that maybe, but he has 4 rings, and he also has Bill Walsh. So yeah, second or third.
If you get to within 1 ring of somebody, I cannot just give the nod based upon quantity of rings, right? 4 to 3, like that's the same field for me, especially when Patrick Mahomes has got maybe more than half his career, probably more than half his career still in front of him. I think John Elway was better than Joe Montana, personally. I think had they switched
the talent you're talking about,
I think if they switch teams, Elway picks up a couple more, and I don't know that Montana wins either one of the ones that Elway does. I think Elway carried a team. Montana was surrounded by superior talent. Like this was an Elway-esque, this team that Patrick Mahomes won with was Elway going up against the Giants. And this was Elway going up against the Command. Like this team, no one's going to remember. I'm like, listen, I know everybody likes Isaiah Pacheco, but he's Gerald Wilhite. He's, go Sammy Winder. Like the Hall of Fame, there's not a gold jacket with Isaiah Pacheco's name on it when this thing is over, right? Neither one of his tackles are going to the Hall of Fame. Joe Tooney might. Like, who are the Hall of Famers that were with him on this run? Travis Kelce, here ended the list on the offensive side of the ball. That's it, right? Where Joe Montana, Jerry Rice.
Let's go back to the Dwight Clark, Freddie Solomon years.
I'm not saying all of
in the
them.
backfield.
I'm not saying all of them.
Roger Craig still hasn't made the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
But he has not, but he's very strongly in consideration for it. Yeah. But on the defensive side of the ball, there was Ronnie Lott. I mean, and they play with a number of talents. Terrell, did he cross paths with Terrell Owens too, didn't he? In there. Joe Montana.
No. He was long gone. Terrell came like 96.
Terrell Owens didn't even win. Terrell Owens never won a Super Bowl.
That's right. That makes sense. But anyway, my point being, this one was more of like pick it up and carry it. So for me, he's number 2. Like to me, what this one did was it ended the discussion of where does he rank? He ranks 2, and he's playing. And I still go back to what we've said the last couple of weeks. He's playing at a higher level. Tom Brady can't run for 66 yards. Like Tom Brady doesn't win that Super Bowl. He doesn't.
I don't know about that.
I don't think he does, because I think the escapability and the running part of the equation. Listen, Patrick Mahomes 10 years from now doesn't win that one. May not win that one because it absolutely required his legs. It required him to be a runner, and Tom Brady wasn't going to do that. And so,
but that's like apples to oranges, right? I mean, they play different styles of football, so to reward a guy for running more. But more mobile is. But
if you play behind an inferior offensive line, if you're going to be successful as a quarterback, you must either get the ball out super quick, which limits what you can do. Which I know people ding Tom Brady late for all the dump offs to White and the drags underneath Edelman and all the short throws and everything. But that's what you got to do when you can't get the hell away from somebody. You got to get rid of the ball. And so I don't ding him. It's just how he had to play the game. But Patrick Mahomes bought time for plays, ran for plays. I don't think Tom Brady wins this one. Now, maybe you can point to one and say, hey, the surgical position of that Tom Brady had, there was nowhere to run. You had to get rid of the ball, and Pat couldn't have won the 94 championship. Fine, let's have that discussion. But I don't think Tom Brady wins this game the way it was played. And that's not to say, I'm not saying Mahomes his body of work is not broad enough to put him ahead of Tom Brady. Wow. But I think we're done talking about anybody. When it comes to Patrick Mahomes and evaluating him, the only measuring stick left is Tom Brady. Everybody else has been surpassed.
That's fair. I mean, I go with Montana just because he changed the game of football. He and Bill Walsh, the way it was played, the way he saw it. And maybe I give more credit to the intellectual part of it, the vision, the accuracy. Again, you're kind of cherry picking this game and forgetting that Mahomes was playing with a pretty good team in the first championship that he had, and also the fact that if you go down the roster of offensive talent around Joe Montana when you run his first one, like I don't think he had a Pro Bowl player on that in that group. I think there's a lot of guys. I mean, those first two championships, there was not when he played against Dan Marino and the Miami Dolphins. People were like, they're going to get killed because Marino had Mark Clayton and Mark Duper, and he was throwing for like almost 5,000 yards. And
they were 15-1. They were not going to get killed by the 14-2 Miami Dolphins.
A lot of people thought Marino
were dumbasses because I was coherent for that Super Bowl. And the 49ers were the story. They barely lost to the Steelers, or they would have been undefeated going into that game.
Well,
and the
you didn't remember how they looked at Dan Marino.
The Dolphins' defense sucked. It sucked that year.
What I'm saying is Marino's offense was what was being celebrated. And they thought, okay, this is like – I remember the commercial they had, big shootout.
You're right.
Marino.
Marino was the hot flavor. There's no doubt. But the 49ers were the squad. I mean, they were that was one of the most dominant.
The Niners were favored in that game by 3.
Yeah. Yeah. They were a house.
Okay. A 3-point house.
Yeah, but well, the Dolphins were really good. They were 15-1 against 14-2.
Yeah.
They were both. I mean, really impressive that year. The Dolphins were just all offensive. First ever 5,000-yard passer, 48 touchdowns from Marino. I mean, he was setting records. So, yes, that was a lot of the buzz. But the 49ers were a complete team all around in that one. But, I mean, I just think, like, if you talk about Brady, the defenses were lights out every year for Tom Brady early on in his career.
Yeah.
All of them, every year.
I'm not saying you're won. I don't say you're wrong for saying it. I think I understand your point. That you can put him at 2. I wouldn't argue it. I'm arguing a little bit, but I can understand it. But I prefer Montana at 2.
Okay. And I'm fine with that. I'm not going to get upset about Joe Montana. I disagree.
Yeah.
But I like, that's fine. Patrick Mahomes got – what would it take to get in front of Montana then?
A 4th one.
And then that's it, no matter how.
Yeah. Because I couldn't even tell you what Montana's numbers are career-wise. But I can tell you what his impact was. Yeah. And I think Mahomes is playing in an era where you don't get hit the way Montana got hit. You don't face the kind of defenses that he faced. Like, again, there, along with the Chicago Bears, the New York Giants, there are people out there who were like maiming people. Like Lawrence Taylor was out there running around destroying people back then. There's nobody doing that today.
Yeah. It's a different game. Listen, Reid's legacy. Like, did anything change in this one, or is he still just counting down championships to, getting caught up with Bill Belichick?
I would say it changed because of how he handled this season. Because it wasn't about this mad genius scheming it up and doing all these great. It was about him like really coaching in a different way and trying to almost like, I wouldn't say like herding cats, but there were a lot of issues with this team. Even up to the point of the week of the game when the Kadarius Toney's out there talking about, I'm not hurt. What's going on here? And so again,
Pat's dad's getting a DUI.
Yeah. And so to keep this team functional and focused, I thought it probably was his best coaching job in Kansas City because there were so many things going wrong on the sidelines, things we'd never seen before, and they got a Lombardi Trophy out of it.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Well, Jeff, you remember, so let's talk about Bill Walsh in Montana. Bill Walsh's last year, they were 10-6, right? They messed around with Steve Young, right? They started young. They messed around with Montana's mind, right? They went on the road. That was the only time Montana won a road playoff game for the Niners was in Chicago in the cold when they won 28-3. Like, there was a lot of parallels between this team, Chiefs, and the 88 49ers because the next year they were 14-2 with Seifert, won the Super Bowl. Previous years they were 15-1, all this kind of stuff, right? One year they were 13-2 in the 87 strike year. They lose to the Vikings in the playoffs at home. This was kind of their 88 Niners where they're 10-6. They needed a few breaks to even make them, all this kind of stuff. And the contrast between Bill Walsh and Andy Reid is after the 1988 season, the Niners ran Bill Walsh out of town. That locker room was like, let's get Walsh the heck out of here. It's nails on a chalkboard. The next year, George, like they played, like there was like a monkey off our back, 14-2 exhale for George Seifert. And that they killed the Broncos like 55-10 or something in the Super Bowl. The fact that everybody wants Andy Reid back after this year kind of speaks to the CEO-ness of what he did this year relative to the mad scientist that he's been for all these years. And I think even though I've been critical sometimes of his play calling, he's obviously great. I'm more picking nits, but like from a CEO standpoint, I think this was his best year, just to make a contrast with another team that won a Super Bowl with a similarly adversarial year in Bill Walsh.
They're a favorite or second favorite to win a third Super Bowl in a row. And I don't put a lot into that because whoever wins, it's always a favorite right now when you put them up on the board, odds-wise. But how good a shot do you give them at winning 3 in a row, Jeff? I mean, we'll get into all the moves and everything they got to make in the coming weeks during the offseason.
Yeah, can they do it? Certainly. I mean, given what we've seen from this group, but I wouldn't bet on it. I mean, I wouldn't have bet on them going back to back, and a lot of things had to, work out in their favor for that to happen. So to do it 3 times, I always look at it like you're talking about having everything that happened this year go that way for another year. So the health factor, you're talking about players like Travis Kelce, betting on him another year. Chris Jones might not be back. Jerry Steve might not be back. The defense might lose 6 players. I just don't. That's a long shot bet. It hadn't happened for a reason. It's to be honest with you, the teams I think about who had the chance to do it. Tom Brady blew his knee out when he was going for it. Terrell Davis blew his knee out when he was going for it. I don't wish anything bad on this bunch, but at some point, like the realities of this league catch up to you when you're trying to chase greatness.
Eric, what kind of shot do you give him?
I think it's a lock. They'll have a better record next year. But as we've seen, like teams that win the Super Bowl this way, they come back. The thing about the 2008 Giants were 13-3 after they ran them. You know what I'm saying? Like the 2011 Packers were 15-1 after 2010 when they win the Super Bowl at 10-6. Like this thing always happens. The bullseye's firmly on their back. The best thing that happened to them this year was they played so poorly that they were underdogs.
Yep.
So I mean, everybody's writing it in there. The field is a great play. I think that the numbers. I think that the numbers make a lot of sense. Plus 700 makes sense to me. We have our simulation at SumerSports.com if you want to look at that for 2024 already. It's going to be a tough road. It's hard to bet against Mahomes, though. It's hard to bet against Mahomes. I do think that they'll be better next year. They're going to get a wide receiver. They're going to get a tackle. They're going to do all these things. They'll be better. But can they cash in? Good question.
I'm not convinced they'll get a tackle. Because I think they looked last year and they ended up where they ended up. I think it'll be real interesting to see what they do in the draft. Do they do some kind of 2 first-round picks to move up and grab a tackle or grab a wide out or, one of those things? I think it will be interesting. But there's going to be attrition. Like there's so many guys on defense that they're going to be replacing. Some they can replace. You can certainly replace one of the linebackers. Leo Chenal is different, but is an effective downhill player. To step in for one of the linebackers. I think their depth at corner allows them to walk on L'Jarius Sneed if they choose to. Like they're not going to be as good, but they're not going to suck with McDuffie and the other guys. They'll need some help along the D line, and they don't have that many draft picks. That's the one thing, guys. I think they only have 5 draft picks, so they should get some free agent compensation. I'll bet. Eric, what would you guess? 7 picks they're going to have. They're going to pick up 2 compensation picks. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I mean, Orlando left, right? So that's going to be a big one. They'll probably get 2. The Hardman thing actually loses them 1. I think that they'll gladly take the Super Bowl. But yeah, the Orlando Brown will be a big one. I think they're going to have to probably do a little trading back. And they obviously lost Brant Tillis this offseason. So they're going to need to backfill there. And so, yeah, it's not going to be as easy.
Yeah, it's not going to be as easy, but they'll still be in good shape. It starts with 15, and there's still a lot of good core pieces to the defense and good core pieces to the offensive line. There's a lot to like out of this team. All right, remember, we're proudly brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete, nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Parking lot problems, they've been making them disappear since 1994, whether it's striping your lot, the concrete bumpers, whether it's starting from scratch the parking lot. One contractor, all things parking lot. That's Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. Big off season to come. We also want to go over our predictions, some of our bold predictions that we made. We'll be doing that in the weeks to come. So for Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, Eric Eager from Sumer Sports, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on a Super Bowl championship edition of the Red, Gold, and Bold